come together today as an expression of our pain, our disbelief, of our grief, as a family, as friends, and as a community, over the passing of Pauline Leber. May the words we speak together here today bring honor to her memory. May the prayers we utter bring peace to her soul. Continue now, Psalm 23.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot Nafshi yeshovev yancheini v'maglei tzedek yancheini v'maglei tzedek leman shemo Gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo ira ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha emayena לפניי שולחן נגד צור וראי דישנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה חסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים
Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Eshet chayil mi yimtza, v'rachok mipninim michra, batach balev bala v'shalel lo yechsar, k'malatu tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha. What a precious find is an Eshet chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She is good, never bad, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully, opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward to bless her. Her husband praises her. And we say, many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. There's an abundance of heartbreak and sorrow among us today. As word spread of the sudden passing of Pauline Leber, Penina bat Yeshia Meir Vesara, messages poured in, recounting the many blessings she brought to this world in her 91 years. To her children, Stephen, Dina, David, Deb, her grandchildren, Ilanit, Alex, Tani, Stephanie, Lior, and Yael, and her great-grandchildren, Nitzan and Meital. We can't comprehend the pain that you feel, but it is our hope that our presence here today is a testament to the indelible mark your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother left on so many of us. Pauline was born in Youngstown on April 23, 1926. She was just a few years old when her family moved to the Kinsman neighborhood of Cleveland. Though she learned to speak Yiddish before learning English, she didn't have to struggle to catch up. Pauline was invited to attend an elementary school for advanced students. Her brother, however, told her that it was a school for dummies, and she believed him. It wasn't until much later that she realized just how smart she was. Pauline went on to graduate from John Adams High School. Anyone who had ever spoken, who had ever met Pauline, knew how sharp she was. Had she been born in a different era, she would have made a fine CEO. Instead, as an executive secretary of the JCC, she trained director after director, even though this was not her job. She made sure that each one of them looked as good as possible. Pauline would scan the newspapers for mentions of notable community members and bring them to the attention of her bosses. She may not have been sitting in the executive director's chair, but everyone knew who the balabusta was. Pauline only went to work when David was in grade school. When she came home from hard days at work, she imparted the lessons she learned to Stephen and David. She loved to teach, to challenge, and to be challenged. Pauline later enjoyed teaching her friends how to use technology. Her younger friends were amazed at how she emailed, and she managed to pay all of her bills online. On her Facebook profile, One can see pictures, yes, Facebook profile. One can see pictures of Pauline with her iPad in one hand and her granddaughter in the other. Her great-granddaughter in the other. I remember talking to Pauline once about her Amazon Echo, the smart speaker device that is still standing in the center of her kitchen. I learned that she knew when it played the song, "Here Comes the Sun," Stephen was about to call from Ann Arbor. Pauline met her beloved Sam on a blind date in 1950. The two married in 1952. Sam had come to Cleveland from Peoria, Illinois to work as an engineer. The two enjoyed over 60 years of marriage together. Sam relied on Pauline for her patience. Pauline relied on Sam for his counsel. He was willing to hear the occasional kvetch or a bit of gossip. After Sam passed just 16 months ago, Pauline mourned for the closeness they shared. At the center of everything was the family that Pauline and Sam built together. Pauline's own family was small. She was the youngest of 4 and 17 years younger than her oldest brother. Her mother was 46 when Pauline was born, and so she often felt like an only child. Her 3 siblings predeceased her. She took it especially hard when her sister-in-law Marion passed. The two were best friends and confidants. They somehow always found a way to be together. When it came to family, Pauline had a special way of making sure that everyone felt like they were her favorite. She kept tabs on what everyone was doing and made sure to check in if there was a special trip or an event coming up. This street, however, went both ways. Pauline expected that her grandchildren would call her and check in. It wasn't too high an expectation, as each of them wanted to do so. It's rumored that her grandson Yale had set a recurring Outlook reminder to make sure that he never forgot to call Bubby. Family also provided Pauline the opportunity to express her seemingly endless creativity. She hosted themed birthday parties for Stephen and David as children. There were lots of pirates and even the occasional Friday the 13th theme. Bubby always had the most creative Afikoman prizes. One year, for Elanit's birthday, Elanit had written a list of wishes she hoped would come true. The list included things like having all of the books in the world and owning Target. But Bubby found a way to make all of these wishes come true, in whatever small way she could. She even went so far as to make sure her granddaughter owned a single share of Target stock that year. When Pauline and Sam moved into a ranch, she dubbed one room Sam's upstairs basement and created a place for Sam to tinker. When family came to town, the house was adorned with a sign welcoming family to Leber's Inn. Aside from her children and grandchildren, Pauline expressed her creativity through knitting, crocheting, cooking, gardening, which she loved so much, taking piano lessons, Yiddish club, investment club, traveling, and in so many other ways. She became the go-to person for anyone who was trying to master just one of these skills. Pauline had a somewhat secret passion for baseball and was known to be quite the ping-pong player in her day. She was a bit of a clothes hound and always looked put together. Pauline even expressed a bit of creativity in her driving. Some say that she was a terrible driver. I'd like to think that she was just doing it in her own creative way. Pauline was a mainstay of the Shari Tikva community for so many years. She was a Shabbat morning regular and helped make minyan on Sundays. She placed herself near the center aisle, at the center of the community, near her dear friend, Rita Stuhl. The Shari Tikva community mourns deeply over this loss of a central figure among us. It has been my honor to serve as her rabbi, even if only for a year. I recall one of the first times I chatted with Pauline. I was blown away by this woman in her 90s who told me that as a newbie in town, I had to go downtown to the new Heinen's supermarket, as she had recently driven herself to do. Why? Do you remember, Leona? You were sitting right next to me, because they had amazing wine tasting that I just had to try. That being said, I think Pauline may have been somewhat skeptical of me at first. It took a couple of months to win her over, but when I did, she wrote me the most beautiful card and extended her best wishes for myself and to my family for a wonderful life in Cleveland. I looked forward to greeting Pauline as I walked down the center aisle each Shabbat. She was quick to offer a hug, a kiss, and a kind word. I know I'm not the only one who's going to miss this in the coming weeks, months, and years. A few months ago when the Shari Tikva board made a statement in response to President Trump's immigration ban, Pauline made sure to tell me how proud she was of our shul. She still had a lot of fight left in her. Pauline was tuned in to current events and had plenty of thoughtful opinions to share. She had a close group of friends whom she loved to entertain. Around her table, friends and acquaintances became family. When she moved into Meyer's apartments, Pauline got rid of many place settings of her dishes. However, she loved to host so much that she quickly found herself buying more place settings. She made her home a gathering space for so many who needed to feel at home. Today, and God willing, for many years to come, Pauline's memory will continue to bring her family and her community together. Ele Maseh B'nai Yisrael. These are the journeys of the children of Israel. Our Torah portion this week recounts the lifetime that passed from our exodus from Egypt until just before we entered into the land of Israel. It does so with a specific rhythm. As readers, we try to follow the many repetitions of Vayisu, they journeyed, and Vayachanu, they encamped. The reader quickly realizes that the repetition of our people's journey is not the point of this exercise. Rather, our attention is drawn toward our emotions. We recall how we felt, where we took missteps, and where we came together as a people. As we recall the journey of the beautiful lifetime of Pauline Leber, I hope we're filled with the many emotions that make up her memory and her legacy. We'll always remember the love and passion with which she mothered and grandmothered. We should look at the life Pauline built as instructions on building a life of substance, meaning, and connection. Just last Tuesday, Pauline emailed her sons to tell them that she returned home safely from her visit to New Jersey. She lived her life to the very end. No one knew that this would be the final leg of her journey in this world. She left us quickly, and thank God her suffering was not prolonged. And so those of us in this room can focus on a legacy built over 91 years. Such a life is made up of so many moments and so many journeys. May our memories of them only bring more blessing into our lives and into our world. And we say, Amen. To invite Stephen to come on up and share a few words. Or David. David, you want to invite David to come up and share a few words.
It's a small world. His wife babysat my son years ago. Jewish geography. Standing here before you to speak about my mother should really be the easiest thing in the world to do, but it really is the hardest. It should be easy because giving a eulogy, you speak about the best of a person's life. And there was so much good about my mother that it's hard to just capture it in words, making it really hard to do. but I'll try. Whether you called her Honey or Pauline, Bubby or Mom, she was special because she knew how to make you feel special. There's not a person sitting here today who knew her that doesn't know exactly what I'm talking about. She was special. For my dad, who called her Honey, she was a wonderful wife. She made him a fuller and better man. She took a shy, introverted man into a circle of lifelong friends. They completed each other's sentences, both literally and figuratively, and she missed him every day since we lost him, but so relished every day they had together. She was a special wife. To her daughter-in-laws, who called her Pauline, they became the daughters that she never had. Loving them like Steve and I do, they became part of her. She confided in them, and they confided in her. One of the great joys I had in the last few years was watching the two most important women in my life, Deb and my mom, put together Bubby's Cookbook, a collection of Mom's greatest hits, built around the holidays. It touched both of their passions, Deb's creativity and project management, and my mom's love of the kitchen and holidays. Cooking and baking were so important to my mother because what it represented. It represented family and holidays and love. Strawberry fluff meant Pesach and grandkids, and Alan and Jeanette coming, and pecan rolls meant her niece and nephew were in town. And I knew exactly where to root around to find the latest mandel bread that she may have stashed away. The joy and memories built around her dining room table have touched so many and will live on. When Yale said his final goodbyes to her in the hospital, I said to him, "Don't remember Bubby like this. She doesn't even have an apron on." She was special. To Steve and I, who called her Mom, she was simply the best. She instilled values, taught us to be mensches, and rooted us in what's important. Dad was brainy, but Mom was the heart. She made growing up with her so special. To those who called her Bubby, she was a rock. If God had taken a handful of humanity and wanted to create a grandmother, it would have come out looking a lot like Pauline. From knitting baby blankets for newborns to flying solo to Boston in her 90s to see Yale graduate for his law degree, she made special moments and special events even more special. She lit up everyone around her. She lit up her grandchildren, and her grandchildren lit her up. Lior, Yale, Tani, Elanit. She was so special to each of you. And to those that were lucky enough to have called her friend, you know that no one could have been a better friend. Steady, available, supportive. She touched so many of you who are here and those who are no longer here. So Selma and Gilda, Lois, Marion, move over. Pauline's on the way. So whether you called her Honey or Mom, Pauline or Bubby, she was special. She was the woman who always had her arms open. God bless you, Mom.
My mother did us a kindness in many, many ways. She made it very clear from early on what she wanted at the end of her life and what she didn't want. And she made the decision-making easy on everybody else. So it was a hard time, but it could have been much, much worse. As everybody's alluded, my mother was always on the go. She had many interests. She was extremely frustrated if she had to sit still. And besides losing my father 16, 17 months ago, probably the hardest part for her was getting tired a lot and having to rest, and not being able to go 28 hours a day. She cut it down to maybe 20 hours a day. She had, as mentioned, she had lots and lots of interests, friends, hobbies. Besides the Yiddish and the Hebrew, which I have to admit she struggled with, she never really learned to differentiate between how are you and what's your name? I'm always like, Ma shlomech, shmi Pauline. Um, she tried really hard. She was involved, as Rabbi Roland said, with her investment club, her knitting, volunteering, learning piano. We just were quizzing her at Pesach. Okay, how many of the 1948 Indians can you name? And I think she got them all. And the gardening. I think she was always jealous of somebody here in the audience of her beautiful garden. But the hardest part of her leaving the house on Deborah was giving up the garden. And she didn't let her old age let her down. We were debating, I think she was bat mitzvah at 75. And she went to Israel as a volunteer at age 80 to teach people English. Just a couple of years ago, she completely redid her kitchen. And then right after that, she completely redid her knee. She kept driving till the end, whereas many of us thought she probably should have stopped 60 or 70 years ago. And then we were also looking last night at pictures of her at Ilani's wedding at age 82, jumping rope. Amazing. But she picked up new things. It wasn't just that she had the hobbies that she persisted with, but new things. The people mentioned the technology. She was one of the first, probably of your generation, to do email. It took a little while for her to get the concept. When Lior went junior year abroad at Hebrew University, my mother sent her an email, happy birthday message, but she mailed it a week ahead of time just to make sure it'd get there in time. But she then expanded her skills, and she did much better. She did her iPad. She had to get rid of her old iPhone and get a new one because it wasn't fast enough. She was downloading digital books and reading them from the library. How many people her age, when they needed a ride, would call Uber? She always loved online games, but then she loved word games, but she converted to online games, and she'd wake up in the morning and see which of her grandchildren had played Boggle or Scrabble with her. She was depositing checks. The whole story about the Here Comes the Sun, I realized I could play music in her kitchen through her Amazon Echo, and I could play music whenever I want and drive her crazy. But she thought she was just hearing things from the streets. So. She was amazingly creative. We mentioned the pirate birthday parties, the cakes. Every year we couldn't wait to see what she had for an afikoman present, and it continued. And she, David talked a lot about her cooking and baking. I think in the last year she was most proud that she won the recipe contest at Myers 3 times, and they cooked her recipes. My mother was really funny. She had a different kind of sense of humor from my father. Even last week, she told me an off-color joke that she would probably prefer I didn't say here. But I don't know why we tortured her. We had this rule that no matter how funny a joke was, we were not allowed to laugh. We would bite our lips. But things like, when I got into medical school, she had this thing of, I don't want to live at a certain point. She didn't say congratulations. She said, oh, good. You can write the prescription for the pill. I said, what pill? She said, well, if I get old, you give me the pill. And I said, I'm not going to do that. She said, oh, I'm moving in with you. And I said, I'll write the prescription. Dina reminded me that my father always went to Robin and Gabriel jewelry store for her birthday to get presents, and after my father died, she went to the same jewelry store to say, okay, what would Sam have gotten me for a present? And she picked out the 3 that he might have thought, and then picked out the one that was the present and bought it for herself. It was the most expensive one, by the way, and she wrapped it and opened it on her birthday. And the kids also reminded me of the time she had an accident when she had been returning from, she bought this big frozen turkey for Thanksgiving. And she was in this accident, and they insisted that she go to the hospital, but she wouldn't let the ambulance drivers leave without getting the turkey out of the car and putting it in the ambulance with her to take to the hospital. And then she trained my father really well, so he finally got to the hospital. And before he even asked about her, he says, where's the turkey? She was always very willing to talk about her feelings. She often prefaced things with, not that I would ever say anything, but, and then in the last year it was, I could say anything I want about people because I'm 91. But her moral indignation was not limited to her being in the 90s. I remember when I had a birthday party in kindergarten, I didn't like one kid in the class, and I said, well, I'm not inviting him. And she said, no, you can't leave one person out. And you have to think about other people's feelings, and that was a rule the rest of her life. She would come home from work and say, this person did something wrong, and I want you guys to learn from it, because that's not the way it should be. Her latest kind of shades of my father was ranting and raving about AT&T and prompting her to pull out the AT&T equipment out of the house. And then 2.5 years ago, she wrote a letter to Toby Cosgrove, the head of Cleveland Clinic. Some of you are laughing already. So she said, Dear Dr. Cosgrove, I don't know if you're Jewish or not. You're probably not, but it's the Jewish New Year, and we wish each other a happy, joyous, and healthy New Year. And even if you may not be Jewish, I'd like to wish you the same, a happy, joyous, and a particularly a healthy New Year, because God forbid you should get sick and try to call Cleveland Clinic. So. She got a response very quickly. She worried about things. She'd always want to know if we drove back to Ann Arbor okay. My daughter just broke her leg in Amsterdam. She couldn't sleep because of it. When Tani was in Alaska for a summer and spent a month on a glacier and then hitchhiking around, she called him and said, Tani, I am so worried about you. It's a Bubby's job to worry about her grandson. And he said, Bubby, it's a 19-year-old's job to make her grandmother worried. His program. There were a lot of important things that she passed on to us, traditions of various sorts. This worrying was one of them. My kids tell me that it's just like she reminded them to call. They say we're picking up the habits and reminding them to do the same thing. She taught me a lot of very useful things in my life that I've used the rest of my life, like how to use a mangler, iron sheets, how to grind fish for gefilte fish, and most important, plucking the chicken feathers on Thursday night. But in seriousness, her sense of Yiddishkeit was amazing. Friday nights was always very special. Each holiday, as David alluded to, was very, very special. The Seders, she had her own traditions. There was the strawberry fluff and Pesach, and the giggling when we read in the Manischewitz Haggadah, the seesaw it and fled. She loved the seesaw. That was her thing with Gilda. But she was always the center of things. She was the center of our family. She was a social center, and she got together with her close friends from Charlton. And then later, she loved to tell us, okay, tonight we're going to the 4th of July. We always have something here. Labor Day is our house. The cookouts at Euclid Creek. Going to Catawba to visit people. The bus trips, with Rita to the opera recently. When my parents were moving to a ranch and the Stuhls moved, they purposely moved within walking distance so the families could be close. She was always easy to talk to on the phone, knew what was going on. Everybody, it was mentioned, became her extended family. If relatives came over, their relatives were our relatives. If friends came over, their friends were her friends. If couples were over, the singles were made to feel welcome. It wasn't a lone thing. This last year and a half, since my father died, was very, very hard for her. She was very lonely. But what really made her life wonderful in the last year and a half was the closeness of her family, special people, the children, the daughters-in-law, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. But I think most particularly the very, very, very special friends she's had from all walks of her life, that she valued you more than you would ever know. And the same is true for the extended family, for the cousins who would come in, the people she could talk to on the phone. And you made the rest of her life unbelievably warm and valuable. Thank you.
Invite us to rise now as we recite these words of El Malei Rachamim. We pray that the compassionate God Allow the soul of Penina Bat Yeshia Meir Vesara to ascend. And as she ascends, may our actions here in this world give her the opportunity when we come together as a family, when we come together as a community and as friends, to be bound up in our lives and to continue living through our deeds.
Malei rachamim, shochein, shochein bamromim, hametzei menucha nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת פנינה בת ישיה מאיר ושרה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנה בעל הרחמים הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום, בשלום על משכבה
El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Pauline Leber, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. You may be seated. God, the mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding. We're perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those whom we love. In sorrow, confronted by death, which has taken Pauline from our midst, we feel our frailty. Like morning dew, we glisten for an hour or two and disappear into a new day. Ro'eh Yisrael, shepherd of Israel, guide us, your flock, with love and compassion. In our grief and desolation, we grow distant. Do not abandon us, but draw us closer to you. Grant solace and comfort to those who mourn. May they sustain each other with blessing of memory and the memory of the life of their beloved friend, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside the still waters and in green pastures, you, God, are our shepherd. Be our strength, our shield, our guide, and be our comfort throughout all of our days. And we say, Amen. Following our service now, the interment will take place at Mount Olive Cemetery, 27855 Aurora Road in Solon. Shiva will be held at Pauline's apartment at Myers, 27200 Cedar Road, apartment number 220. Today, following the interment until 7 p.m. with Mincha at 6:30, and Tuesday and Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. and 6 to 8 p.m. with Mincha at 7 p.m. Contributions can be made in Pauline's memory and her honor to Congregation Shari Tikva, to the Mandel JCC, or to our Cleveland Jewish Community Foundation or Federation. Now invite our pallbearers, Stephen, David, Dina, Deb, Alex, Tani, Kiva, and Yael to come forward. Invite the rest of us to please rise.